Cadia stands, or Cadia once stood, or is it Cadia is still standing? Either way, it doesn't matter. Welcome on in. This is Sprues and Studs, and today we are actually going to be taking a look at two Cadian action figures that was recently released by JoyToy, and we will see exactly what these action figures are about. So let's jump right on in.
Cadia stands. Or doesn't. Revealing?
Alright, Imperial Guard action figure lovers. The first action figure that we're going to take a look at is the Cadian Command Squad Commander with the Power Sword. One thing that I noticed when I was unboxing this particular figure was that he kind of looked like a generic modern day army figure, and that I think that if JoyToy was going that route, they did a very good job with it. So anyways, we shall take a look at this guy right here, starting off with his head. And the head is sporting a very deep scar that's running from the top of the head all the way down to his cheek. And there is plenty of shading in the scar, which make it stand out. The eyes are screened on fairly nicely with a piercing stare. And this guy also is rocking a very, very tight grimace on his face, as he's probably issuing orders and barking commands. So on this guy's flak armor shoulder pad, there are a bunch of symbols right here, as I am not really too familiar with Imperial Guard stuff. And then on the left shoulder is a 4, a skull, as well as a 9, and this is actually screened on, and it looks like it's screened on fairly nicely. Now, as we take a look at the arms of this action figure, there is a nice contrast of different colors here. So you have the dark skin, the maroon of the cuff of the clothing, and some gold accents, and finally the tan fabric that is heavily shaded. And the same cases on this other side too, except that there is a generator that probably powers the power sword right here. We will move on to the middle of this action figure, and there is a section where it has a winged skull that you get to see on a lot of these Space Marines, and the flak armor is nicely shaded down here as well. So moving on down to the torso area, there is a pouch, a buckle that has a silver skull on it, and then you also have a holstered bolt pistol right here. And then finally back here, you have more detailed pouches, although it would have been nice if they put some shading here to give a little bit more definition to break up the monotony of this brown here. So with regards to the commander's coat, there is shading here, shading over here, and pretty much in the deeper recesses, which is nice. And then as we flare out the bottom of this cloak, we get to see the trousers of this commander, and there are green knee pads here that are a flat green. And then it's nice to see actually the folds of the fabric here. It really looks very lifelike, and the same goes with the commander's boots down here too. So it would have been nice to see some highlights on the highest ridges of this action figure's boots, but there are highlights that are actually present down here on the bottom. So now we're going to move on to this power sword. It's more like a power saber, which is actually pretty cool. And it mimics exactly how a Space Marine's power sword looks. So you've got the dark silver right here, and then dry brushed with a light silver to give it a nice weathering. There's a translucent blue glow, which we are all very familiar with. So we're going to put the body down here and take a look at a few other things. So this is the bolt pistol that is given to this commander, and this mimics the bolt pistols that we've seen for the Space Marines. So black casing and weathered silver on the other elements of this bolt pistol. I'm going to put this part down and take a look at the helmet that this commander comes with. So it's got a silver winged skull and then some kill markings up top. Aside from that, it is a very flat green with absolutely no highlights or shading whatsoever on it. And then finally is this backpack that fits with this peg. This backpack around this circle area does have some shading on it. So there's a few things I'm going to point out with this action figure. I think that what JoyToy did was basically take this bolt pistol from the Space Marines and pretty much given it to this commander. I find this a little bit comical because look at this bolt pistol. it covers the whole entire forearm of this action figure. So proportion-wise, it's a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. And the final thing that I'm going to touch on is this helmet here. So this helmet doesn't really fit this commander very well because it doesn't have any ear indentations here. So when you put this on, it looks kind of goofy because right here, the ear is not covered, whereas on the other side, it still looks a little bit wonky. So now let's take a look at the veteran with the regimental standard. All right, up next, we have the Cadian Command Squad veteran with the regimental standard up for review. And we shall see what's up with this action figure. It looks like he has the same helmet as the commander, except that this helmet actually does sit fairly well on his head. The eyes look like they are printed on quite nicely, and this veteran also has quite a grimace, although it is not as pronounced as his commander's. So on the shoulder pad of this flak armor, we have some symbols right here, as well as on the other side, we have the 4, the skull, and the 9 as well. Then moving on, there is like this bandolier type pack that this action figure is rocking. You can see that there are 3 pouches over here. And moving down to the middle section of this action figure, we have more pouches. There is a frag grenade here too that also has a lot of weathering that's happening. And let's see what we have on the back of this action figure. We have yet another accessory pouch, and there is a combat knife apparently. And this combat knife is actually functional too. You can take it out of its sheath, holster, whatever you want to call it. So the knife is a regular silver type of color, nothing too much with regards to it. You can tell on this fabric of this tunic, whatever you want to call it, there is plenty of shading as well. And moving on down, you got the characteristic green knee pads as well as the very, very many folds with the fabric here. And moving on to the boots, I actually like these boots better than the Commanders because there's a two-tone effect going on. So you have the brown on the top and then black on the bottom. We shall move on to this las rifle, and the las rifle is really nice in the fact that, well, this actually looks very realistic here. You can see the bunching of the fabric, and it has that 3D type of effect to it that I'm very, very impressed by. You can also take this weapon outside of the holster type apparatus, and this is the naked las rifle right here. So anyways, we're gonna put this back here, and this actually does attach to the back of the veteran like so. We're gonna now move on to the gigantic regimental standard, and we're going to start off with this very diminutive pole right here, and the pole is a dark gunmetal color, and you can see that this has been weathered with a dry brushed silver starting from the top, and it kind of gradually diminishes toward the bottom. So that's all of that. And then this gigantic standard right here. So it is topped with a laureled skull, and the laurels are obviously gold, the skull is gold, but there is no shading in between the leaves of this laurel, which again would have been nice to give a little bit more of definition. Now moving on to the bread and butter of this whole thing. This is also made of a soft plastic, and over here you get to see the double Akula with some etching. You've got 8 right here, as well as Cadia down here, and the Cadia is ingrained into the plastic itself, which is nice. And then there is plenty of shading in between the banner areas. And then the shading also does happen with the banner up here as well. Let's flip over to the other side and see what we can see. And it appears that it is the mirror reflection and opposite of the other side with little to no difference. So all right, we have reviewed the 2 representatives from Cadia, and now it is time to conclude this video. So now that these 2 Cadians have been reviewed, let me know what you think of them in the comments section and whether you are actually going to get these guys or not. So the whole entire reason why I wanted to get these 2 figures out of the 5 that were released was mainly of 2 reasons. One, I really like standards, and I've said many a time before that the reason why I get these other chapters is because, well, these standards right here really catch the eye when you're displaying them, and I think they are very unique and have a lot of different iconography. So again, your eyes get attracted to this. So that's why I got the guy with the Regimental standard. And with regards to the rest of this action figure, I really like the combat knife, and I also like that holstered las rifle. I think that the way that it is held together by that leather looks really realistic. And the reason why I got the commander, well, is because he's a commander, and I really like this power sword or power saber, whatever you want to call it. And I think his face is actually fairly unique and interesting as well. And there's, again, lots of things to like about these two action figures in that, well, with regards to the clothing, there's a lot of wrinkles in the fabric. There's plenty of shading that's going on with them. So I have to admit to you, these guys look a little bit like cookie cutter army figures, but that's exactly what the Cadians are supposed to be, and I understand that fact. So this actually may not be for some, but for people that like to collect these action figures that look very modern in this time period, these guys definitely would fit that bill. So anyways, thanks for watching, members of the chapter. I appreciate you all. And if you are interested in procuring these action figures, just click on the link in the description below and use the code SNS to receive a 12% discount off your purchase. And with that being said, I will see you all in the next one.